So, does audio quality really matter, or is it just good enough? Because after all, I have a lot of training and my reads are super competitive. I've been in the voiceover industry for years and I've never had a problem so far.
My booth sounds good to me.
I've booked jobs in the past, so obviously there's nothing wrong.
My agent says my audio sounds great.
Okay, so let me get this out of the way immediately. If you do voiceover as a hobby, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I get it. It's super fun. But one of the first things I always ask my students or my clients is, why are you doing voiceover? Are you wanting to do this as a hobby, or do you want to make this a career? So, in this video, I'm not talking to the people that want to do this as a hobby. I'm talking to the people that want this to be a career and they want to be competitive in the voiceover industry. Also, let me say, I completely understand if you don't have the finances to get to the level that I'm talking about in this video. Voiceover can be expensive right up front to get yourself to a competitive level. Typically, you want to do these things in stages, right? You want to get what you need to get to a certain level up front, and then as you book jobs, you want to pay yourself back and invest into your career and upgrade your gear, upgrade the treatment for your room first and foremost, and that's typically how you want to go about it. If you have the money to spend up front, then by all means, go ahead. It's just that most of us aren't that lucky. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. Oh, the good old days. Back when you could send in a voiceover audition, and if the audio quality wasn't quite up to standard, or in some cases not even close, it wasn't that big of a deal because they were just trying to listen to your read. They didn't need the audio quality to be super professional. If you booked a job, they would just book out a studio, and then you would go into the studio and you would record the job there. Now, back in those days, if I had been doing voiceover, I still would have made sure my audio was as professional as possible. Let's face it, we're in the business of audio. If I opened a restaurant and my food was amazing, but I never passed a single health inspection because I had roaches, my building was falling apart, I never washed the dishes I served the food on, yeah, eventually I would lose all my customers and I would go out of business. So yeah, why wouldn't you want your audio to sound as professional as possible? Doesn't make any sense. But now, let's fast forward to 2020. Yeah, well, now that the C word has happened, and I'm just gonna censor that word from here on out because I know we're all tired of hearing that word, the quality of your home studio can make or break you as a voice actor. Think about it. The industry was already thinking about moving more towards home studios before COVID happened. They were just really hesitant to pull the trigger because of a lot of hiccups that could potentially happen moving everybody into their home studios. But when COVID happened, it kind of forced everyone in that direction, whether they liked it or not. Now that that's happened, there's a few key things to take away. Number one, the bar's been raised. Typically, when the bar gets raised in the industry, it doesn't go back down. It just stays where it's at until it gets risen again. Most people now have home studio samples at the ready to send to agents, clients, and studios whenever they need to. So yes, studios are opening back up, and you've probably already been back in studios for a while now, but let's look at this from a client's perspective. They've just seen how much money they can save not having to book out a studio and just having the talent record from their home studio if it sounds good enough. So the percentage of clients booking out studios will likely drop. In other words, if your home studio isn't up to par, you're gonna get left behind. Now, that's not to say that studios are going away because that is absolutely not the case. Here at Atlanta Voiceover Studio, we stay booked constantly. It's just you need to make sure that you're evolving with the industry as a voice actor every step of the way. And right now, that means making sure your home studio sounds as professional as it possibly can. Speaking of your home studio, a common problem that voice actors face is the fact that they think buying a really expensive microphone, like a Neumann U87, which is a $3,000 microphone, is going to make their audio and their studio sound professional. This could not be further from the truth. I cannot stress this enough. How you acoustically treat your space is 70 to 80% of what will make your audio sound professional. So, if you have a Neumann U87, a $3,000 microphone, and you haven't professionally acoustically treated your space, your audio is going to sound like garbage. Whereas if you have professionally treated your space, you can have a $270 microphone like a Rode NT1 and sound like you're on a $3,000 microphone because your space was properly treated. Now, everyone's space is different, which means everyone's space needs to be treated for its specific challenges. Now, full transparency, this isn't to say that the microphone doesn't matter, because it definitely can. Spending under $250 on a microphone will most likely get you not so great results. Now, that's definitely changing as we speak. Technology is getting unbelievably amazing very quickly. And there are definitely some exceptions, but it's always best to play it safe. Just don't expect to go out and buy a $70 snowball and be competing with the top level in the voice acting industry. Another thing to note is though big name, expensive microphones don't make your audio sound professional, it can sometimes make a client hire you, or at least be the final push or reason that they hire you. Let's be honest, saying you have a Neumann U87 or a Sennheiser 416 rolls nicely off the tongue. Okay, now, let's go back to a few of those comments made at the very beginning of the video. I've been in the voiceover industry for years and I've never had a problem so far. That may be true, but why all of a sudden have you stopped booking jobs over the past year? Or why have your booked jobs dropped drastically over the past year? These are questions you need to be asking yourself. In the acting industry, we rarely get feedback, whether it's good or bad. So how do you know for sure whether your space sounds professional or not?
My agent says my audio sounds great.
Now, I'm gonna do my best to try not step on any toes here, but an agent isn't the greatest place to get feedback on the quality of your audio. I know. Hear me out. When the pandemic started, there was a lot of agents sending out emails telling their talent, you need to go out and get a Neumann U87 microphone so that your audio sounds professional. What?
Just no. Oh my God, what is wrong with—
Holy sh! Now, that alone is enough for me to not need to go into any further explanation, but for the sake of this video, I will. Agents are amazing. Some of them. And they work really hard for you, and they can hear a good and a bad read in 1 second. But let's be honest, audio isn't easy, or everyone would be an audio engineer. It takes years and years of ear training, dedication, and practice to be able to hear bad audio. And I'm not talking about bad audio. We can all hear really bad audio. I'm talking about subtleties in the audio, or maybe not so subtle, but when you can hear a read and you can go, oh, this is what's wrong with their space specifically. I can tell just by hearing the audio. That is what an audio engineer trains for years to be able to do at the drop of a hat. It's not easy, like I said, or everyone would be able to do it and you wouldn't need to hire audio engineers. I've heard so many actor spaces over the years that sound, and yet somehow they're with agencies. Now, obviously there are exceptions here, as with anything. Some agents actually have highly tuned ears for audio, but the vast majority of them don't understand acoustics. So instead of trying to please the ears of agents, you should instead be trying to please the ears of an audio engineer. That way you're covered across the board for when you send your audio to any agency, you know that you're gonna be fine, and you won't be left wondering, is my audio the reason that I haven't booked anything this year, or that my bookings have dropped so drastically over the past year? The other thing to keep in mind is, remember what I said earlier about we very rarely get feedback in this industry, good or bad. So if your agent does tell you your audio sounds good, well, what if the client hasn't reached out to that agent to tell them, hey, so-and-so's audio doesn't quite sound as good as the rest of the actors? Because it's not the client's job to hold your hand and to reach out to your agent and let them know you need to improve your space. That responsibility is on you. That client that's casting, or that casting director that's casting that project, they're just gonna skip over you and cast another person with better audio. They're not gonna take time away from the deadline that they have to meet for that project to reach out to you or your agent to let you know that your audio needs to be improved. They're just gonna cast somebody else so that they can move on with that project. So, no matter how long you've been doing this, no matter how successful you've been in the previous years, you need to make sure you're always evolving with the industry. And right now, that means having a really solid home studio. Any professional will tell you in this industry, nothing is guaranteed. You can book nonstop for a solid year and then the next year not even book a single job. You wanna make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to set yourself up for success, and that way, you at least know you've done everything you can. What if you could have booked an extra 10, 20, or 30 jobs this year so far if your audio had been up to par with the rest of the competition? Well, another problem voice actors face is the whole A/B scenario. What does that mean? Well, before I explain, let me first say this. In most cases, voice actors don't know what their space is supposed to sound like because why should they? They're actors. They're not engineers. They've spent years and years training to get good at acting, and most of them aren't even slightly interested in learning audio. So why would they spend extra years and years on top of the years and years they've spent on acting to learn audio engineering and acoustics? Now, again, don't get me wrong, there are always exceptions out there. Me, I'm a voice actor, but I'm also an audio engineer. But we're talking about the vast majority out there. Most people, they don't want to know anything about audio. It makes them want to fall asleep, and I completely understand it. I'm just a nerd that loves audio, and I also voice act. So a problem is they're used to how their space sounds. Good or bad, that's what they're used to hearing. So that's what their ears and their brains have become accustomed to. Most of the time, they're not hearing anybody else's space, so they have nothing to compare their space to. So back to the A-B scenario. This can be really problematic for a lot of actors. If they hear their space and then someone's professionally treated space right behind theirs, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, they can't believe how much better the other voice actor's space sounds and they wish they had properly treated their space a long time ago. Number two, they immediately think their space sounds better than the other properly treated space because that's what their ears and their brains are used to hearing. You can think about it like somebody who has filmed themselves on a low-res 1080 camera for years and years and years, and they finally see themselves on a high-resolution 4K camera, and they immediately think it looks bad. It's not because it looks bad, it's because they haven't seen themselves in that high of resolution ever, and it's really jarring for their brains. So, if you're actor number 2, you suffer from what's familiar to you. Your ears have become used to hearing yourself in your space, and eventually your brain starts to perceive that as good. Your ear completely tunes out the boxy sound that's in your audio because our ears are actually very, very good at tuning out certain sounds, and now all of a sudden it doesn't even sound like they're there. But again, actor number 2 is not an engineer, and they shouldn't have to be an engineer or understand acoustics. But this is where you need to make sure you're reaching out to professionals to assess your audio and make sure it sounds the best it possibly can. Okay, shameless plug time. I know hearing the term acoustically treating your space can sound pretty daunting, but this is where I can help. I teach 2 classes at Atlanta Voiceover Studio. One of them is Learn Adobe Audition and one of them is Learn Audacity, and we cover a ton of stuff in these classes. We actually have 1 week that's fully dedicated to properly treating your space, whether it's through soundproofing or acoustic treatment. And those 2 things are very, very different things. People get them mixed up and confused and think that they're the same thing. They are not. So, like I said, we have a whole week that we dedicate to this. I evaluate your specific space in all 6 weeks of this class, and we get it sounding as professional as we possibly can. But just a few things that we cover as I throw up a list of things that we cover in the class is microphones, interfaces, how to properly set your levels, how to find your noise floor, proper mic technique, which can really be a big one. And then, like I said, an entire week dedicated to soundproofing and acoustically treating your specific space, evaluating your specific space throughout the 6-week course, how to edit your auditions faster inside the DAW, keyboard shortcuts, automation to make your workflow faster, equalization, compression, denoising, declicking your audio, normalization, measuring your audio for audiobooks for ACX, punch and roll, spectral frequency display, and a ton of other stuff. If you'd like to sign up, I'll leave a link in the description below. Also, you can find my course that's all about building your home studio as well as acoustically treating and soundproofing your space over at provoiceovertraining.com, as well as many other courses that we offer there as well, and we will be posting more and more courses up there each month, so make sure to check back. I hope this video has been helpful and given you more clarity about the direction the industry is moving in and how you can get out in front of it. If you like this video, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe, and, well, you know what they say.